Chapter 1. The Tyrant King of Uruk. The city of Uruk rose like a jewel upon the Mesopotamian plain. Its walls so high and strong that travelers from distant lands, the people of Uruk, lived amidst fertile fields, bustling markets, and magnificent temples dedicated to the gods. And above them all, ruling from his palace of stone, was Gilgamesh, the great king. But though his name meant glory, and though his lineage was divine 2/3 God and 1/3 man, Gilgamesh was no gentle ruler. His strength was unmatched, his beauty dazzling, and his mind sharp. Yet all of these gifts, bestowed by the gods themselves, had turned into a curse for his people. For Gilgamesh, drunk on his own power, had become a tyrant. He demanded the first share of harvest and tribute. He conscripted young men into endless labor to build his monuments, and forced young brides to share his bed before they knew their husbands. No family was untouched by his cruelty. The people wept at night, praying in hushed whispers to the gods. "O great Anu, Father of the heavens, hear us. O Aruru, Goddess of creation, have mercy. Deliver us from the hand of this king who crushes his people like clay beneath his heel." The prayers of the people rose like smoke to the heavens, and the gods gathered in their divine assembly. They debated what must be done. The Sky Father, Anu, spoke first. "Gilgamesh is strong, but his strength is unchecked. He tramples his people, though they are meant to love him." The goddess Aruru, who had shaped mankind from clay, lifted her hand. "Then I shall create his equal, one who will stand against him. If Gilgamesh is the raging storm, I shall fashion the wild bull of the steppe to face him. Through this rival, his heart may learn wisdom." And so Aruru, with divine power, dipped her hands into the sacred clay of the earth. She shaped a man, not of cities, but of wilderness, clothed in shaggy hair, with the strength of lions and the freedom of the wild. This was Enkidu, the beast man, who drank beside gazelles and wrestled with predators of the plain. He knew nothing of human law or kingship, but he knew the language of animals and the rhythm of the earth. Meanwhile, in Uruk, Gilgamesh's arrogance only grew. Each night, he prowled the city like a lion, seeking new ways to prove his dominance. He boasted to his counselors, "There is no man alive who can match me. I will carve my name into eternity, and none shall resist my will." Yet in the silence of his chamber, even Gilgamesh felt a restless hunger he could not name. Power brought him no peace. Victory left him unsatisfied. Somewhere deep within, he longed for a companion, someone strong enough to stand beside him without fear. The gods, in their wisdom, had heard this unspoken longing as clearly as they had heard the cries of the people. And so fate began to weave its threads, preparing a meeting between the tyrant king and the wild man of the steppe. The first whisper of Enkidu's existence came not from the gods, but from a humble hunter. This man, while setting his traps in the forest, found them continually broken. At first, he thought it the work of lions, but then he saw him a giant of a man, shaggy with hair, running with gazelles as though he were one of them. His strength was terrible. No beast dared stand before him. The hunter watched in awe as Enkidu freed animals from his snares, protecting them as a shepherd would protect his flock. Terrified, the hunter ran back to Uruk and told his father what he had seen. The old man, wise with years, advised him, "Go to Gilgamesh. Tell him of this wild man. He will know what must be done." Thus, word of Enkidu reached Gilgamesh's ears. At first, the king laughed. "A wild man roaming the steppe. Does he think himself my equal? Let him come. I shall teach him the strength of Gilgamesh. But the king's mother, Ninsun the wise, heard differently. She gazed into the divine omens and said, "My son, this man will be your companion, not your enemy. In his friendship you will find the balance you lack." And so the stage was set. The gods had answered the cries of the people. Gilgamesh, the mighty yet restless king, and Enkidu, the child of clay and wilderness, were destined to meet. Their clash would shake Uruk to its very foundations, and from it would be born a bond strong enough to echo through eternity. The city waited, its people trembling between hope and fear. The tyrant king still walked among them, but soon another figure would arrive, carrying with him the promise of change. Thus began the first chapter of the Epic of Gilgamesh. Chapter 2. The creation of Enkidu. Far from the walls of Uruk, in the vast wilderness where reeds bent beneath the desert wind and rivers wound like silver snakes, the goddess Aruru prepared her sacred work. She had heard the cries of the people and the arrogance of Gilgamesh, and now she would bring forth a being unlike any other. Aruru knelt by the banks of the river, her divine hands dipping into the earth. She gathered clay, dark and moist, rich with the essence of life. Holding it, she whispered words of creation, the same words that had shaped mankind at the dawn of time. Her voice was low and steady, carrying the rhythm of eternity. From the clay she molded broad shoulders, a chest strong as a bull, and arms thick as tree trunks. She pressed her breath into the form, and the clay quickened, flesh warming, eyes opening. Where there had been lifeless soil, now stood Enkidu, the wild man. His body was covered in shaggy hair, his face fierce and untamed. His feet knew the earth better than sandals ever could, and his hands bore the strength of beasts. He was not born of city walls or temple rituals. He belonged to the wide plains, the hunting grounds, and the freedom of the wilderness. Enkidu roared his first breath into the open sky, startling a flock of birds into flight. The gazelles raised their heads, but did not flee. They recognized him as one of their own. Soon he ran with them, swift as the wind, drinking from rivers, tearing at roots and grasses. Lions approached him, but he wrestled them down with laughter, proving his might even among predators. He was free. He was wild. He was untamed. And yet, though his body lived in strength, his spirit knew nothing of human ways. He did not understand kingship or temples, or why men bowed to the gods with offerings. He knew only instinct and survival. Meanwhile, the hunter who had seen him grew more fearful. Day after day, his traps were ruined, the animals freed. Each time, Enkidu appeared, scattering the prey before the hunter could take them. At last, the man cried in frustration, "Father, what am I to do? My snares are useless. This wild giant roams the plains and destroys my work. I cannot feed my family, for he undoes all I have set." The old father, grave and wise, answered, "Go to mighty Uruk. Speak to Gilgamesh, the great king. He will know what must be done." The hunter traveled swiftly, his heart pounding with both fear and hope. Before the throne of Gilgamesh, he told his tale. "O king, there is a man unlike any I have seen. He runs with gazelles, drinks at the riverside, and frees every beast from my traps. His body is strong as a god, covered in hair like an animal. None can oppose him. He is a wild man, and I cannot hunt while he roams." Gilgamesh listened with interest. His eyes gleamed, for he sensed the hand of the gods in this matter. Yet his pride burned hot. "Another man of strength. Let him come to Uruk. I will show him that none are my equal." But Gilgamesh's mother The wise Ninsen interpreted the omen differently. "My son," she said, "this wild man has been sent by the gods, not to destroy you, but to balance you. Where you are proud, he is humble. Where you are fierce, he is wild. He will stand beside you as a friend. In his company you will find what your heart secretly longs for." Though Gilgamesh scoffed, the words of his mother lingered. The hunter, meanwhile, was given counsel by the elders of Uruk. "Take with you Shamhat, the temple harlot, woman of wisdom and beauty. She knows the ways of men. Send her to the wilderness, and when Enkidu lies with her, he will be drawn away from the animals. For the beasts will reject him once he has known the touch of humankind. Then, softened and changed, he will follow her to Uruk, where destiny awaits." And so the plan was set. The hunter, with Shamhat beside him, departed Uruk and journeyed to the watering hole where Enkidu often came to drink. There, hidden among reeds, they waited. At dawn, Enkidu appeared, mighty and free, his footsteps shaking the ground. With him came the gazelles, who grazed fearlessly, for they trusted this protector of the wild. The hunter whispered urgently to Shamhat there, "Behold him. Strip off your garments, tempt him with your beauty. When he comes to you, the beasts will turn away. Then he will belong to us." Shamhat, unafraid, stepped forth into the open air. Her garments fell, her body radiant in the rising sun. Enkidu stopped in his tracks, his eyes widening with wonder. He had never seen a woman, never known such a sight. The gazelles pranced nervously, then bolted into the distance, leaving him behind. Drawn by a force he did not understand, Enkidu approached Shamhat. She smiled gently and beckoned him. For 6 days and 7 nights, Enkidu remained with her, learning the ways of man, tasting bread, drinking water, and knowing pleasure. When at last he arose, the animals no longer came near. They sniffed the air and fled from him, for he was changed. He belonged no longer to the wild. Enkidu stood, bewildered, watching them go. His strength remained, but his innocence was gone. Shamhat, seeing his confusion, laid her hand upon his chest and said, "Do not grieve. You were made for more than the wilderness. Come with me to mighty Uruk. There you shall meet Gilgamesh, king of men, and together you will fulfill the destiny the gods have written." And so Enkidu, the creation of Ururu, began his first steps toward Uruk, the city of shining walls. The path of man had begun for him, and soon his fate would entwine with that of Gilgamesh the tyrant king. Thus ended the second chapter of the Epic of Gilgamesh. Chapter 3, The Coming of The desert sun blazed over the horizon, gilding the land in fire and gold. The air shimmered with heat, and the ground cracked under the weight of the season. Enkidu walked with Shamhat at his side, his steps heavy, his heart still torn between the wilderness he had lost and the destiny that now pulled him forward. For the first time, he wore garments. The linen clung strangely to his body, rubbing against skin that had known only the brush of wind and grass. His hair, once wild as the mane of a lion, was now bound with simple cords. Every change felt foreign, yet Shamhat's presence steadied him. "Do not fear," she told him, her voice soft and knowing. "What you have left behind was a beginning, but what lies ahead is greatness. The gods do not mold men of clay for no reason." Enkidu did not answer. His gaze wandered to the sky, where hawks circled high, free as he once had been. He clenched his fists. "The animals no longer look upon me as one of their own. They flee from me. Am I less than I was?" Shamhat shook her head. "No, and you are more. You have gained wisdom, the mind of man. What is strength without wisdom? The beasts run because you are no longer theirs. You belong to another world now. Enkidu walked in silence, but her words settled in him like seeds awaiting rain. Arrival at the camp. After days of travel, they reached a shepherd's camp at the edge of Uruk's grazing lands. The shepherds were wary. At first Enkidu, massive and untamed in bearing, seemed more beast than man, but Shamhat reassured them. This is Enkidu, a man sent by the gods. He shall be your protector. The shepherds offered him bread and wine. Enkidu hesitated. He sniffed the bread, coarse and unfamiliar. What is this? He asked. Food of men, Shamhat replied. He bit into it awkwardly. The taste was strange, rough, but it filled him in a way wild grasses never had. Then he drank wine, red and strong, and warmth spread through him. His heart grew lighter, and he laughed, for the first time since leaving the wild. That night, Enkidu guarded the shepherds' flocks. When wolves prowled the outskirts of the camp, he rushed upon them with a roar, seizing one by its scruff and hurling it into the dark. The men cheered. He is strong as 10. Truly, the gods have sent him. For the first time, Enkidu felt pride, not in solitude, but in the recognition of others. Rumors of Gilgamesh, the shepherds, in gratitude, spoke freely to him. They told tales of Uruk, of its towering walls and bustling markets. But their voices grew bitter when they spoke of Gilgamesh. Our king is mighty, one said, but he is merciless. He takes the sons for soldiers and the daughters for his pleasure. None can stop him. None dare to speak against him. Another spat into the fire. He forces the young to exhaustion in endless labor, and if a man resists, he is beaten or slain. Uruk suffers, though its walls shine with glory. Enkidu frowned, his heart stirred with anger. How can a king be so cruel to his own people? Shamhat's eyes gleamed, for she saw destiny unfolding. It is for this reason you were created. Gilgamesh has no equal until now. You will stand against him, you will show him the limits of his power. Enkidu's fists tightened. A fire awakened in him, fierce and righteous. If Gilgamesh oppresses his people, then I will confront him. I will bring justice. The journey to Uruk. At dawn, Enkidu set out with Shamhat toward Uruk. Along the way, farmers and travelers they met spoke the same of Gilgamesh, praise for his strength, but fear for his tyranny. Each tale stoked Enkidu's resolve. As the great city rose in the distance, Enkidu stopped in awe. The walls stretched high into the sky, gleaming in the sunlight like mountains of stone. The gates were broad, guarded by soldiers, and within the city, the noise of life surged. Markets bustling, hammers ringing, voices calling. This is Uruk, Shamhat said with pride, the jewel of and within waits Gilgamesh. Enkidu's chest tightened. He felt both anticipation and unease. For though he was made of clay and divine breath, he was still new to this world of men. Could he truly face a king who claimed descent from the gods? Yet his spirit answered with certainty, yes. Gilgamesh's dream. That same night, before Enkidu entered the gates, Gilgamesh himself had a dream. He saw a great star fall from the heavens, landing in the streets of Uruk. The people gathered around it, whispering in awe, but Gilgamesh alone could not move it. Instead, the star rose on its own, shining brightly, and stood before him like an equal. Startled, he went to his mother, the wise Ninsun. Mother, I have seen a star fall from the sky. It shone with great power, and all loved it. But I could not move it. It stood beside me, as though it were my brother. Ninsun smiled softly, for she understood. My son, the gods have sent you a companion. You will find in him a rival who is your match, yet also your friend. Together, you will accomplish deeds no man has ever dreamed. Gilgamesh frowned, unwilling to share his greatness. A rival? No man is equal to me. But Ninsen only said, wait, and you shall see. Thus, as the dawn of destiny approached, Enkidu entered the gates of Uruk, while Gilgamesh brooded over his dream. Soon their paths would meet, and the clash of titans would shake the very walls of the city. This was the coming of Shamhat, and the beginning of the greatest friendship the world would ever know. Chapter 4. The Clash at Uruk. The gates of Uruk loomed tall, carved with sacred lions and bulls, symbols of Gilgamesh's unmatched power. Enkidu paused, staring at the city's walls that shone like bronze under the rising sun. Never had he seen such a placestone stacked higher than the trees of the steppe. Streets alive with the clamor of voices, and banners fluttering in the wind. Shamhat touched his arm gently. Do not falter now. Within these walls waits your destiny. Enkidu's chest swelled. He was no longer the wild man of the grasslands. He was a challenger forged by the gods. The people's anguish as they entered Uruk, the people stopped to stare. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Who is this giant? His arms are strong as Gilgamesh. Could it be the gods have sent us an answer? Mothers clutched their children, young men whispered with hope, and the old nodded knowingly. Word spread like fire. A wild man had come, one who might finally stand against the king. That very morning, Gilgamesh prepared to enact his cruel custom. A noble wedding had been arranged, but as was his law, the king claimed the bride first before her husband. The people groaned, but dared not resist. Shamhat's voice cut through the murmurs. Enkidu, do you hear? This is the injustice you were born to end. Enkidu's fury ignited. He strode to the gates of the palace, where drums beat and torches burned. When the guards tried to block him, he roared like a lion, and they shrank back in awe. The confrontation. Gilgamesh, splendid in his robes, emerged from the palace steps. His eyes narrowed as he beheld Enkidu. Who dares block my path? He demanded, his voice echoing across the courtyard. Enkidu stepped forward, towering like a storm. I dare. You will not take this bride, nor any other. A king should protect his people, not dishonor them. The crowd gasped. None had ever spoken to Gilgamesh so boldly. Gilgamesh's lips curled in a mixture of rage and amusement. You are bold, stranger, but no man has ever matched me in strength. Stand aside or be crushed. Enkidu planted his feet, unyielding. I was made for this moment. If you wish to pass, you must defeat me. The city fell silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The battle of giants. With a roar, Gilgamesh lunged, his arms like hammers, striking down. Enkidu caught the blow, the force shaking the ground beneath them. The clash of their strength sent dust swirling, and the crowd cried out in astonishment. The two titans grappled, muscles straining, feet gouging furrows in the stone streets. Gilgamesh twisted, trying to throw Enkidu, but Enkidu held firm, his body unyielding as a mountain. They crashed through market stalls, shattering wood and scattering goods. Women screamed and men scrambled aside as the fight raged like a storm through the city. Gilgamesh struck with the fury of a lion. Enkidu answered with the power of the wild bull. Again and again they collided, neither yielding, each blow thunderous as though the gods themselves were clashing. The turning point. At last, Gilgamesh heaved with all his strength, lifting Enkidu from the ground and slamming him into the dust. But Enkidu rose at once, his eyes blazing with defiance. He grappled Gilgamesh again, pinning him against the great gates of Uruk. The people gasped. For the first time, their king was not triumphant. Sweat poured down Gilgamesh's brow, his breath ragged. But then, something shifted. Enkidu did not strike the final blow. Instead, he held Gilgamesh fast and looked into his eyes. Enough. You are strong, but strength is not for tyranny. Rule your people with honor. Gilgamesh stared back, his fury cooling. No man had ever dared to match him, yet here stood one who had, and who spoke, not with hatred, but with truth. Slowly, Gilgamesh's rage gave way to laughter deep, booming, genuine. By the gods, you are my equal. Never have I known such joy in battle. You are no enemy, Enkidu, you are my brother. Enkidu, still catching his breath, released his grip. A smile tugged at his lips. Then let us stand together, not as foes, but as companions. The birth of brotherhood. The people, who had watched in awe and fear, now erupted in cheers. Hope swept through Uruk. Their king had been humbled, and yet he had gained something greater, friend who could temper his might with wisdom. That night, Gilgamesh and Enkidu feasted together in the palace. Wine flowed, music filled the halls, and laughter echoed until dawn. In their hearts, they knew their meeting was no accident. It was the will of the gods. Two heroes had been joined, and the world itself would tremble at the deeds they would accomplish. Chapter 5: The Bond of Brothers. The dawn rose over Uruk, casting golden light upon the city's walls. Inside the palace, the great hall was alive with celebration. The people of Uruk had never seen their king so transformed. No longer did Gilgamesh wear the scowl of arrogance. His laughter rang out, deep and genuine, echoing among the marble pillars. At his side sat Enkidu, his wild hair still uncombed, his frame vast and powerful. The two men had fought as enemies, yet by the will of the gods, they now sat as equals. The people, though wary at first, felt a new hope rising in their hearts. A feast of reconciliation. Servants brought roasted meats, honeyed bread, and golden cups of wine. Music filled the air, flutes and drums rising in harmony. The citizens of Uruk gathered in the courtyards outside, their voices singing praises, for they sensed that a new age had dawned. Gilgamesh raised his cup high. To Enkidu, who has taught me the strength of brotherhood. The hall erupted in cheers. Enkidu, unused to such ceremony, shifted uneasily, but his deep voice rumbled in reply. And to Gilgamesh, who has shown me the strength of man's heart. The people cheered louder still, their voices thundering through the streets of Uruk. Conversations in the quiet. As the night deepened and the music softened, the two warriors withdrew to the palace gardens. Torches flickered, casting shadows upon the carved lions that guarded the walkways. Gilgamesh looked at his companion. Enkidu, when I first saw you, I thought you my enemy. But now I see the gods' wisdom. Alone, my strength was like a storm, with no direction. With you beside me, we are like two rivers, joining together, unstoppable. Enkidu smiled faintly. I was born of the wilderness, knowing nothing of cities or kings. Yet in you, Gilgamesh, I see the heart of man flawed, but burning with fire. Perhaps this is why I was brought here. Not to oppose you, but to walk with you. Their words lingered in the night air. For the first time, Gilgamesh felt the weight of destiny's shift. No longer was he simply a king who took what he wished. He was part of something greater, a bond that would shape the future, the people's hope. In the days that followed, the city rejoiced. Where once they feared Gilgamesh, they now saw him walking the streets beside Enkidu, laughing with children, speaking with elders, even lending his hand in lifting heavy stones during the rebuilding of market stalls destroyed in their battle. The people whispered, "The king has changed. He listens now. Perhaps with Enkidu beside him, Uruk will flourish." And so the city, long burdened by the arrogance of its ruler, began to breathe freely once more. Restlessness of heroes. Yet even as peace settled over Uruk, both Gilgamesh and Enkidu felt a stirring within their hearts. They were men of power, born not only for feasts and laughter, but for deeds that would echo through eternity. One evening, as they sat upon the palace roof watching the stars, Gilgamesh spoke, "Brother, do you feel it? This life of ease is not enough. My soul longs for a greater purpose, to leave behind not just walls and kingship, but a name that will be remembered forever." Enkidu nodded slowly. "I too feel the call. The wilds still sing to me, the forests, the mountains. Perhaps our destiny lies beyond these walls." Gilgamesh's eyes gleamed with a dangerous light. "Then let us seek a challenge worthy of us. Beyond the cedar forests lies the beast, Humbaba, guardian of the gods' sacred grove. His roar is like a tempest, his breath is death. If we slay him, our names will be etched into eternity." Enkidu stiffened, a shadow crossing his face. "Humbaba is no mere beast, Gilgamesh. He was set there by Enlil himself. His gaze alone can shatter men. To face him is to risk doom." But Gilgamesh only smiled. "All men face death, brother. But not all men live so that their names endure. Together, we cannot fail." Enkidu looked into Gilgamesh's eyes and saw the fire of destiny. Though fear gripped his heart, he could not deny it. Their bond had been forged in battle, and together they would seek glory. A pact of brotherhood. That night they clasped hands, swearing an oath beneath the stars. "Together we will face all trials. Together we will seek glory. Together we will defy even the will of the gods." And so the bond of Gilgamesh and Enkidu was sealed not by the clash of their fists, but by the joining of their spirits. Beyond the walls of Uruk, the cedar forest awaited, and with it, their first great trial. Chapter 6: The Call of the Cedar Forest. The bond between Gilgamesh and Enkidu grew stronger with each passing day. Yet though Uruk thrived beneath their shared presence, restlessness gnawed at them both. Greatness, they knew, was never forged in comfort, it was carved in the wilderness, where gods tested mortal men. The whisper of destiny. One evening, Gilgamesh stood upon the walls of Uruk, gazing out toward the horizon where the desert met the distant mountains. The city behind him glowed with firelight, but his heart beat not for feasts and song. His eyes burned with hunger for something more, immortality of name, a legacy that no stone tablet could forget. Enkidu approached, his heavy footsteps echoing upon the stones. "You stand restless, brother. What troubles you?" Gilgamesh did not turn. "Enkidu, this city thrives, but within me there is a void. To rule is not enough. What will men say of me when I am dust? That I built walls, that I drank wine and wore a crown? No. My name must be spoken long after Uruk's towers crumble." Enkidu frowned. "And how will you earn such a name?" Gilgamesh's voice dropped to a whisper. "By facing the terror that dwells in the cedar forest, the monstrous Humbaba." The legend of Humbaba. At the sound of the name, Enkidu's heart trembled. He had once roamed those sacred lands before the gods tamed his spirit. His voice grew low and grave. "Humbaba is no mortal foe. He was appointed by Enlil himself, guardian of the sacred cedars. His roar shakes the mountains, his breath is death, and his face, so brother, his face alone, strikes terror so deep that the strongest warrior flees. But Gilgamesh's eyes gleamed with reckless fire. And yet, Enkidu, is this not the very challenge the gods have placed before us? To slay Humbaba would be to achieve eternal fame. Our names will be sung in temples, carved into stone, remembered forever. Enkidu shook his head. I fear for you, my friend. Even with your strength, even with mine, this path leads to death. Gilgamesh gripped his shoulder firmly. Death comes for all men, but glory belongs only to those who seize it. The Council of Elders. The next day, Gilgamesh called upon the elders of Uruk and declared his intention. I will travel to the cedar forest and strike down Humbaba, that monster who terrifies men. By this deed Uruk shall gain honor, and my name shall echo in eternity. The elders gasped in horror. My king, do not. One cried. Humbaba is beyond human strength, another warned. Even the gods tremble at his power, a third whispered. But Gilgamesh stood resolute, his jaw set like stone. I will not live as a man who dies in obscurity. If death awaits me, let it be at the hands of a monster, not the slow decay of time. Ninsin's blessing. That night, Gilgamesh went to his mother, the wise goddess Ninsin, who lived within her sacred temple. She looked upon her son with sorrow, for she foresaw the peril of his journey. My child, she said, caressing his brow, your heart burns with fire, but fire consumes as well as warms. Humbaba is not meant for mortal hands. Yet I cannot turn you from your path. Go then, but go with my blessing. She raised her arms to the heavens, calling upon Shamash, the sun god, who watches all from above. Great Shamash, guide my son. Let your rays blind Humbaba. Let your strength become his. Then she turned to Enkidu and placed her hands upon his shoulders. You, wild son of the steppe, are no less than a brother to Gilgamesh. Guard him as you would your own soul, for his fate is bound to yours. Enkidu bowed deeply. As long as I draw breath, he will not fall. Preparation for the quest. For 7 days, the smiths of Uruk labored to craft weapons worthy of heroes. They forged mighty axes, their edges glinting like lightning, and swords that gleamed with divine fire. Shields were carved from the hardest woods, bound with bronze. When the weapons were brought before them, Gilgamesh and Enkidu tested their weight, their swings splitting logs with ease. Gilgamesh laughed, his spirit rising. With these, we shall tear down the monster. Enkidu's heart, however, was heavy, for he alone knew the true horror of Humbaba. Still, he could not abandon his brother. The departure. At dawn, the gates of Uruk opened. The people gathered in sorrow and awe, watching their king and his companion march forth. Mothers wept, children clung to their fathers, elders prayed to the gods. Gilgamesh raised his hand in farewell. Fear not. We go to bring glory to Uruk. The people's voices rose in a chant. Gilgamesh meant do. Gilgamesh meek do. Together, the two heroes strode into the wilderness, their shadows long upon the earth, the cedar forests calling to them from afar. And though none dared say it aloud, many wondered, would they ever see their king again? Chapter 7. Journey into the Wilds. The gates of Uruk closed behind Gilgamesh and Enkidu, and silence fell over the crowd left behind. The two heroes marched eastward, their weapons gleaming beneath the rising sun. Their hearts bound to a destiny neither could escape. The land before them stretched vast and perilous, for between Uruk and the cedar forest lay deserts, rivers, mountains, and the lurking shadows of demons. Days in the desert. For 7 days and 7 nights they crossed the burning desert. The sun blazed mercilessly, scorching the earth into cracked dust. Their lips dried, their throats burned, yet they pressed on. Gilgamesh carried himself proudly, though sweat streaked his bronze skin. The gods test us, and each step in this furnace makes us stronger. Enkidu, hardened by years, roaming the wilderness, moved with calm endurance. The desert is cruel, but it is not our true enemy. Save your strength for the forest, brother. Humbaba waits. At night, they made camp beneath the glittering stars. The silence of the desert was broken only by the hiss of wind across the dunes. Sometimes, Gilgamesh dreamed of shadows that crept at the edges of firelight, whispers of spirits watching. On the 8th dawn, they reached the foot of a mountain range, where sheer cliffs rose like the walls of the gods themselves. Guarding the pass were 2 terrifying figures, scorpion men, half human, half beast, their bodies towering and armored, their stingers arching over them like curved swords. Their gaze alone was said to strike men dead. The ground shook as the creatures moved. One raised his voice, thunderous as storm. Who dares to pass into the realm of the cedar forest? Gilgamesh stepped forward, unflinching. I am Gilgamesh, king of Uruk. Beside me is Enkidu, my brother in arms. We come to challenge Humbaba and to earn glory eternal. The scorpion men lowered their eyes upon them. Enkidu felt dread crawl over him like ice. But Gilgamesh held their gaze, refusing to falter. At last, the female scorpion, her voice like deep wind, spoke. We have watched men for countless ages, and none who tread this path return. Yet, your hearts burn with fire the gods themselves have kindled. Pass, if you dare but know that death follows close. The guardians moved aside. The mountain path yawned open, jagged and dark. The mountain of Meshu. They climbed through the mountain passes where the air grew thin and cold. Snow clung to their cloaks, and icy winds cut their flesh. Strange echoes haunted the caverns, and shadows moved where no man walked. On the 3rd night, as they rested by a cliff, a sound like thunder rolled across the peaks. Enkidu gripped his axe. Something hunts us. From the darkness emerged lions, great beasts, their manes silver in the moonlight, their eyes glowing with hunger. Gilgamesh rose with a roar, seizing his sword. The first lion lunged, but his blade split its chest. Enkidu swung his axe, crushing the skull of another. The beasts circled, snarling, but the 2 warriors fought as one, their movements flowing like river and stone. By dawn, the mountain was littered with the slain, and the survivors fled into the wild. Gilgamesh, bloodied but unbroken, raised his weapon high. Let the gods see. Nothing will stop us. Visions from the gods. That night, as Gilgamesh slept, he dreamed. A great mountain loomed before him, and from it descended a storm of fire and smoke. The mountain's voice thundered. You will face the terror of the forest, but one shall fall before glory is won. He awoke trembling. Enkidu watched him closely. You dreamed again. Tell me, brother. Gilgamesh recounted the vision, and Enkidu grew pale. The gods warn you. Humbaba's breath is fire, his mouth a flood. Your dream speaks of death. Gilgamesh, perhaps mine, perhaps yours. Gilgamesh placed his hand upon Enkidu's shoulder. If fate demands it, we will meet it together. But we will not turn back. The edge of the cedar forest. At last, after weeks of hardship, they descended into a valley where the air grew heavy with the scent of resin and earth. Before them stretched the cedar forest, vast and unearthly, its trees towering like pillars that touched the sky. Shafts of sunlight pierced through the canopy, but the shadows beneath were deep and alive with whispers. Enkidu stopped, his body tense. He placed his palm against a cedar trunk, and his voice quivered. "This is the domain of Humbaba. I can feel his breath in the wind. My brother, the true trial begins now." Gilgamesh lifted his sword, his eyes blazing. "Then let us carve our names into the heart of this forest. Let us face Humbaba and see whether death or glory claims us." Together, they stepped into the gloom, their figures swallowed by the trees, as unseen eyes watched from the depths. Chapter 8. The Shadow of Humbaba. The cedar forest closed around Gilgamesh and Enkidu like the jaws of a living beast. The trunks were so vast that 10 men, hand in hand, could not encircle one. The air grew thick with the scent of sap and earth, but beneath it lingered something darker, the musk of rot and the faint taste of smoke. Above, the canopy shut out the sky, leaving the world in twilight. Each creak of a branch, each whisper of wind, felt like the breath of something watching. Enkidu's steps slowed. His wild instincts, sharpened from years among beasts, prickled with dread. "This is no ordinary forest," he murmured. "The air itself listens. Humbaba's presence is everywhere." Gilgamesh gripped his sword tighter, forcing back the unease gnawing at him. "Then let him hear us. We did not come to crawl like frightened men. We came to carve our legend." Whispers in the dark. They pressed deeper, moving cautiously. Strange shapes loomed between the tree's roots, twisted into claws, shadows that seemed to shift when unlooked upon. At times, a low groaning rumbled through the earth, as though the forest itself breathed. Gilgamesh halted when he saw movement ahead, a silhouette, massive, hunched, and grotesque. It vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Did you see it?" Gilgamesh hissed. Enkidu nodded, sweat running down his temple. It was him. "Humbaba stalks us, like a hunter circling prey." The first roar. The silence shattered with a roar so terrible, it shook the branches. Birds burst from the trees in a frenzy, their cries mingling with the thunderous echo. The ground trembled. From the depths of the forest, a voice bellowed, heavy as stone, grinding against stone, "Who dares trespass into my domain?" Gilgamesh's heart pounded, but he forced his voice to answer, steady and proud. "I am Gilgamesh, king of Uruk. With me is Enkidu, born of the wild. We have come to face you, Humbaba, and claim the cedar wood for our people." The forest seemed to shudder with laughter. "Foolish mortals," the voice rumbled. "You bring only your depths. My breath is fire, my roar is the flood. The gods themselves set me here as guardian, and I will grind your bones into dust." Signs of terror. Then came the stench sulfur, and blood carried on the wind. The trees groaned, as if in pain. A shadow slithered across the ground, vast and serpentine, though its source could not be seen. Enkidu staggered, clutching his head. "His aura, it crushes me. It is the curse of Enlil, who made him. Gilgamesh, he is not like mortal beasts, he is born of chaos itself." For the first time, Gilgamesh felt a flicker of fear gnaw at his resolve. Yet he lifted Enkidu to his feet. "Brother, we will face him together. No shadow can break us if we stand as one." The dream returns. That night, they camped at the forest's edge of a vast glade, though sleep was poisoned with unease. When Gilgamesh closed his eyes, the dream returned. he saw a colossal figure, shrouded in flame and smoke, its eyes burning like suns, its teeth like mountains. The earth cracked beneath its steps, rivers boiled, and the sky darkened. Then, a hand reached for him from the fire, enormous and clawed. Before it struck, he woke, gasping, drenched in sweat. Enkidu watched silently. "You dreamed again." Gilgamesh nodded, his voice hoarse. The mountain spoke once more. "Death walks with us." Enkidu's face hardened. "Then we must strike first, before the shadow devours us." The approach of Humbaba. By dawn, the forest grew darker, though the sun surely rose above. The trees twisted into unnatural forms, and the air grew heavy with dread. Then, at last, they heard the thudding of colossal footsteps. Leaves shook loose from branches. Birds fled in chaotic flocks. And from the mist ahead, something vast moved. Two eyes flared like molten gold. A maw split open, jagged teeth glinting, as a guttural growl rumbled from the depths of its chest. Its skin was like the bark of cedar fused with scales of bronze, its body towering above the trees. Humbaba had revealed himself. The beast's breath scorched the ground, smoke curling from its nostrils. With a voice that made the forest quake, he roared, "Turn back now, insects, or meet your doom. The gods have decreed, no mortal shall leave my forest alive." Gilgamesh raised his sword. His voice rang clear, though his body trembled. "We came not for death, but for glory. If the gods sent you, then let them watch as we strike you down." Enkidu lifted his axe, standing at his brother's side. "Then, let the shadow fall. Today, Humbaba meets warriors, not prey." The giant monster bellowed, shaking the heavens. The battle was inevitable. And so, as the forest darkened and the ground split beneath their feet, Gilgamesh and Enkidu prepared to fight the terror of the cedar forest. Chapter 9. The Battle with Humbaba. The glade shook beneath the weight of Humbaba's steps. Trees splintered like reeds, and the ground cracked as the guardian of the cedar forest emerged in his full terror. His body towered like a mountain, wrapped in scales that gleamed like bronze under dim light. His face twisted and monstrous shifted between the features of man, lion, and serpent. When he roared, the air itself seemed to shatter, sending a shockwave that knocked birds from the sky and flattened the grass at Gilgamesh's feet. Enkidu whispered hoarsely, "That roar carries the power of 7 curses. He is no beast, brother, he is a storm made flesh." Gilgamesh steadied his breath. "Then we must be the thunder that splits the storm." Clash of titans. With a sound like mountains colliding, Humbaba lunged. His arm, thick as a cedar trunk, swung downward to crush the two warriors. "Move!" Enkidu shouted. They rolled aside, just as the blow smashed into the earth, tearing a crater in the soil. Dust and shattered wood rained down like arrows. Gilgamesh charged forward, sword flashing, and struck at the beast's leg. The blade bit deep, but Humbaba's hide was like iron. Sparks flew, and the king was thrown back by the sheer force of the recoil. The monster laughed, a sound that split the trees. "Your steel cannot wound me, child of clay. The gods themselves armored me against your kind." The breath of fire, Humbaba inhaled, and with it, the forest shuddered. His chest swelled, and then a torrent of flame burst from his mouth. The fire roared across the clearing, searing everything in its path. Gilgamesh raised his shield, heat blistering his skin. Beside him, Enkidu swung his axe, deflecting a burning tree before it crushed them both. Through the blaze, Enkidu howled, "Gilgamesh, strike now. His chest is open." Gilgamesh sprang through the smoke, his sword gleaming. He slashed at Humbaba's torso, carving a line across the monster's chest. For the first time, dark blood spilled, sizzling as it hit the earth. Humbaba staggered back, enraged. His voice shook the heavens. "Impudent worms! You will drown in your own screams." Enkidu's fury. The beast swung his massive hand, striking Gilgamesh and sending him flying into the roots of an ancient cedar. The king groaned, stunned, blood running down his temple. Seeing his brother fall, Enkidu's rage erupted. He leaped forward, roaring like a lion. With both hands, he swung his axe, cleaving into Humbaba's arm. The blow split bark like flesh and tore scales free. Humbaba shrieked, the sound rattling through the bones of every living creature. Enkidu pressed the attack, hacking again and again, each strike fueled by fury. But Humbaba was not so easily undone. With his uninjured hand, he backhanded Enkidu, sending him crashing into the ground. The earth shook beneath the impact. Gilgamesh cried, staggering to his feet. The moment of resolve. As Humbaba advanced, his shadow swallowed the two warriors. His voice boomed like thunder. "Lay down your weapons, and I may grant you a merciful death. Resist, and I will tear you apart, piece by piece." Bloodied and bruised, Gilgamesh pulled Enkidu up. Their eyes met king and wild man, bound by brotherhood, stronger than blood. "No," Gilgamesh growled, raising his sword. "We were not born for mercy. We were born for glory." Enkidu grinned through bloodied lips, lifting his axe. "Then let us carve it into the flesh of a god." Together, they stood, side by side, as Humbaba towered before them. The sky trembles, Humbaba roared, summoning storms. Black clouds swirled overhead, lightning crackling through the canopy. The forest seemed alive with rage, branches lashing, roots writhing like serpents. The monster's curses fell upon them, visions of fire, drowning seas, endless night. The weight of despair pressed on their souls. But Gilgamesh shouted into the storm, defiant, "Your curses cannot bind us. We are two made one, and together we are stronger than fate." With a cry, they charged. Gilgamesh's sword flashed like a shard of the sun, while Enkidu's axe thundered like the strike of a storm. Steel met flesh, and the battle raged like the clash of worlds. A god's voice. As the struggle reached its height, the heavens stirred. The voice of Shamash, god of the sun, broke through the storm. "Strike, Gilgamesh. Strike while the beast falters. I shall blind him with my light." A beam of golden fire cut through the clouds, striking Humbaba's eyes. The guardian roared, stumbling, clutching his face. Seizing the moment, Gilgamesh leaped high, sword raised. For Uruk, for glory. And with all his might, he drove his blade toward Humbaba's neck. Chapter 10. The Death of Humbaba. The forest seemed to hold its breath as Gilgamesh descended, sword flashing like a fragment of the sun. The blade tore through the stormy air and struck Humbaba's neck with a sound like thunder shattering stone. Dark blood sprayed in an arc, hot and steaming, as the guardian let out a scream that shook the heavens. Trees cracked, birds fell lifeless from the sky, and the earth itself trembled as if mourning its protector. Humbaba fell to his knees, clutching his throat. His monstrous eyes, blinded by Shamash's divine light, now dimmed with something stranger fear. The plea of a titan, "Stop." The beast rasped, his voice no longer thunderous, but cracked, broken. He coughed, black blood staining his jagged teeth. "Spare me, Gilgamesh. Do not let me die here like a beast in the dirt." The king froze, sword still dripping with blood. Enkidu, bloodied and limping, stumbled to his side. Gilgamesh, do not listen. He is the guardian of the gods' domain. If we let him live, he will strike again. Kill him now, before his strength returns. But Humbaba's voice was filled with desperation. I was made by Enlil himself, not by choice but by command. I have guarded this forest for ages untold. Free me, and I shall serve you. I will cut cedars for your city. I will be your eternal servant. Spare my life, mighty king. The conflict within, Gilgamesh's hands trembled. He looked into the beast's glowing eyes, and for a moment, he saw not a monster, but a creature bound by fate, trapped in service to gods who cared nothing for his suffering. His chest tightened. Was he about to kill not an enemy, but another prisoner of the divine? Perhaps. Gilgamesh whispered, lowering his blade slightly. Perhaps there is mercy, even for one such as you. Enkidu roared with fury, grabbing his brother's arm. Mercy? No, Gilgamesh. This is a trick. His tongue is as poisonous as his breath. Do not be deceived. The voice of the sun god, above, Shamash's voice, rang again, stern and clear. Strike him down. Do not falter. The moment you spare him, he will curse you both. The gods did not bind him to serve you, they bound him to destroy men. Do not show weakness. Gilgamesh's jaw tightened. His heart was torn between mercy and duty, compassion and survival. Humbaba's body trembled before him, massive and broken, yet still radiating the power of a god's curse. Humbaba's final curse. With a sudden burst of strength, Humbaba raised his hand toward the heavens. His voice boomed, drenched in blood and wrath. If you strike me down, Gilgamesh, I curse you. May Enlil see your arrogance and punish you. May Enkidu, your brother, fall before you in death, leaving you to wander in grief. May your victories taste of ashes, and your glory turn to dust. The forest howled as if echoing his words. The ground split, trees bled, sap like tears, and the sky darkened. Gilgamesh's eyes widened. For a heartbeat, fear gnawed at his soul. But Enkidu snarled, lifting his axe high. Curses or no curses, we end this now. The killing blow, with one swift motion, Gilgamesh raised his sword, and Enkidu swung his axe. Together, steel met flesh. The blade cut through sinew, the axe crushed bone. Humbaba's head fell with a crash that shook the glade. His body collapsed beside it, a mountain of flesh and blood staining the sacred forest floor. For a moment, silence ruled. The great guardian was no more. The silence after, the forest groaned, mourning its protector. The air was heavy with the smell of blood and burning cedar. Gilgamesh and Enkidu stood over the corpse, chests heaving, faces shadowed by both triumph and dread. Enkidu spat on the ground. It is done. He cannot rise again. But Gilgamesh's gaze lingered on the fallen titan. Despite the victory, a shadow fell across his heart. Humbaba's dying curse echoed in his mind. Enkidu will die. Your glory will turn to dust. He clenched his fists, trying to banish the thought. No curse can bind us. We are stronger than fate. But deep within, unease stirred. Taking the prize, they set about cutting the sacred cedars, their blades sharp against the mighty trunks. The wood would be brought back to Uruk, trophy of their conquest, proof that even God's guardians could fall before mortal hands. Yet as the trees fell, each crash seemed to Gilgamesh like the tolling of a distant funeral bell, the shadow of doom. When at last they rested, Enkidu laughed, blood on his teeth. Brother, we have achieved what no man has dared. songs will be sung of this day for 1,000 years. Gilgamesh forced a smile. Yes, songs. But behind his eyes, Humbaba's final words burned like fire. And though the guardian's body lay still and broken, his curse had already begun to take root in the fabric of fate. The sun dipped behind the forest canopy, casting long shadows that clung to the heroes as they made their way home. And in those shadows, doom was already stirring. Chapter 11. The Wrath of the Gods. The path back from the cedar forest was heavy with silence. Gilgamesh and Enkidu carried with them the head of Humbaba, wrapped in cedar boughs, but no song escaped their lips. The wind that once whispered through the towering trees now seemed to howl in mourning, and every step felt as though the earth itself resisted their return. Though victorious, the weight of the guardian's final curse clung to them like a shroud. In the halls of the gods, far above, in the realm of the divine, the gods gathered. The news of Humbaba's death had reached them swiftly, carried on the winds of Shamash himself. Enlil, lord of the earth and father of storms, rose from his throne, his face a tempest of rage. His voice thundered, "Who has dared this crime? Who has slain the guardian I set over the cedar forest, my chosen protector? Who dares to break the balance I decreed?" Shamash, the sun god, stood unflinching beneath Enlil's fury. It was Gilgamesh of Uruk and his companion, Enkidu. They came seeking glory, and I gave them my aid. Humbaba's cruelty had become unbearable. His terror spread beyond the forest. It was right that mortals should stand against him, but Enlil's wrath only deepened. His beard bristled like thunderclouds. "Shamash, you have overstepped. Humbaba was mine to command, not yours to destroy." His death tears at the very order of creation. "These mortals, this king of Uruk and his wild brother must pay." Ishtar, goddess of love and war, leaned forward, her lips curling into a sly smile. "Perhaps their arrogance deserves a lesson. Gilgamesh is strong, but pride blinds him. He rejected me once, spurning my love. Now, perhaps, fate delivers me an opportunity." The gods murmured among themselves, the air thick with divine judgment. Enlil slammed his staff against the floor. "It is decided. We will strike them. Their victory will not go unpunished." A shadow on the journey. Meanwhile, Gilgamesh and Enkidu pressed on toward Uruk. They spoke little, each man lost in his own thoughts. Enkidu tried to push away the memory of Humbaba's curses, but in the silence, the words returned like the sting of a wound that would not heal. "May Enkidu die before you." He clenched his fists. No, he would not fall. He and Gilgamesh were brothers, stronger than gods themselves. Nothing could part them. But Gilgamesh walked with a shadow on his soul. The forest still seemed to whisper with the guardian's dying breath, and though he forced himself to stand tall, the thought gnawed at him. What if curses could bind kings as surely as crowns? The city rejoices. When at last they reached Uruk, the people poured into the streets. Cheers filled the air, drums pounded like the heartbeat of the city, and women scattered flowers before their feet. "The heroes return," they cried. "Gilgamesh has slain the guardian of the gods. Enkidu has conquered the wild and the divine alike." Children danced, men shouted praises, and the elders blessed the king for his strength. The cedar wood was brought into the city, a treasure greater than gold, to be used in temples and palaces. But amid the joy, the gods above looked on with cold eyes. Mishtas. Desire, that night, as Gilgamesh bathed and clothed himself in royal robes, a presence entered the hall. Ishtar, radiant in her beauty, descended in a storm of fragrance and light. Her eyes burned with desire, her lips curved with hunger. She approached the king boldly. "Gilgamesh," she said, her voice like silk wrapping around a blade, "you are glorious among men. Your body is strength itself, your courage brighter than the sun. Come be my husband. I will make you the ruler of all the earth. Kings and princes will bow to you. Even the beasts of the field will kneel before your throne. Together we will be eternal." The court fell silent. The goddess of love and war had laid her offer before the king of Uruk. To accept her hand would mean divine favor beyond imagining. To reject her, Gilgamesh felt the eyes of his people upon him, the weight of her beauty pressing into his soul. But he also remembered her cruelty. He knew the tales of her lovers, all betrayed, all destroyed. The shepherd turned into a wolf, the gardener struck down by her wrath, the stallion broken and lashed with whips. And beneath her perfume, he smelled the venom of danger. The king's refusal, Gilgamesh straightened, his gaze fierce. "Ishtar," he said, his voice carrying across the hall, "you offer me love, but your love is poison. Your embrace is a trap, your promises lies. You have ruined every man who has touched your hand. Shall I be the next to fall beneath your cruelty? No, I will not be your husband. I will not be your victim." The hall gasped. No mortal king had ever dared speak so to a goddess. Ishtar's face, once beautiful with desire, twisted with fury. Her eyes burned like fire, her lips curled back like a serpent's. "You dare reject me. You, mortal dust, deny the goddess of heaven." She raised her arms, shrieking, "I will make you pay. If you will not lie in my bed, then you shall lie in a grave. By the power of Anu, my father, I shall unleash a beast upon your city that will trample your people into dust." Her voice shook the palace walls. The people fell trembling to the ground. Gilgamesh stood firm, though his heart thundered in his chest. The gathering storm. That night, Ishtar ascended to the heavens. Before her father Anu, she wept and raged. "Father, Gilgamesh has mocked me, insulted me before his people. Grant me the bull of heaven, that I may crush his city and tear him from his throne." Anu frowned. "If I give you the bull, Uruk will face famine for 7 years. Have you stored enough grain for such a curse?" "Yes," Ishtar cried. "The people will suffer, and Gilgamesh will weep as his city burns. Give me the bull." Anu, though weary of her rage, relented. "Very well. Take the bull of heaven. But know, its rampage will shake the earth, and mortals will pay the price of your fury." Ishtar smiled through her tears. "So be it. Gilgamesh will fall." And so, from the heavens, a terror began to descend. Chapter 12. The Bull of Heaven. The sky above Uruk darkened, though no storm clouds moved across it. The air grew heavy, the earth trembled beneath unseen hooves. People ran into the streets, staring upward with terror in their eyes. Then it came, the bull of heaven, massive, divine, terrible, descended from the sky. Its horns gleamed like crescent moons, sharp enough to pierce mountains. Steam burst from its nostrils in clouds of flame, and each breath shook the walls of Uruk. Its body was vast as a hill, muscles rippling with celestial power, and every step crushed the stone streets beneath it. Ishtar rode upon the wind beside it, her face twisted with fury and triumph. She pointed to the city. "There, strike, great bull. Trample Uruk, and destroy the one who scorned me." The beasts rampage. The bull bellowed, a roar that echoed like thunder through the heavens. Then it lowered its horns and charged. The first strike shattered the earth, A great chasm opened in the fields outside the walls of Uruk, swallowing 100 men. The second strike shook the city itself, and 1,000 warriors fell to their knees, the ground heaving beneath them. Panic swept the streets. Mothers clutched their children, men abandoned their homes. The cries of the people rose like smoke. "Where is our king?" they shouted. "Where is Gilgamesh? Who will save us?" Gilgamesh and Enkidu stepped forth. Gilgamesh stood upon the walls of Uruk, his eyes blazing. Beside him stood Enkidu, unflinching, his wild heart burning with fury at the goddess's cruelty. Enkidu growled, "This is no beast of the earth. This is the vengeance of Ishtar." Gilgamesh's jaw tightened. "Then we shall slay it, as we slew Humbaba. No power of heaven or earth can stand against us when we fight side by side." The two heroes descended into the streets, the people partying before them with desperate hope. The clash, the bull of heaven lowered its head and charged, hooves splitting the ground. Gilgamesh leaped aside, his great axe flashing in the sun, while Enkidu seized the beast by the horns. The force of its rush drove him back, his heels furrowing the earth, but he did not yield. "Strike, brother," Enkidu shouted. Gilgamesh swung his weapon, the blade biting deep into the beast's flank. The bull roared, twisting with fury, flinging Enkidu aside. He rolled, bruised but unbroken, and sprang to his feet once more. The bull reared, slamming its hooves into the ground. Another fissure split the earth, swallowing dozens of men who cried out in terror as they fell. Enkidu's rage boiled over. "Enough," he roared. He leaped upon the bull's back, his hands gripping its horns. With all the strength of the wild, he forced the beast's head down, straining, his muscles trembling. Now, Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh charged, his axe raised high. With a mighty cry, he brought the blade down upon the bull's neck. The weapon bit through flesh and bone. The bull screamed, a sound that shook the heavens, and blood poured like a river into the streets. Together, the heroes struck again and again until the great bull of heaven collapsed, its body shaking the earth as it fell. The goddess's fury, from the walls of Uruk, Ishtar shrieked in rage. She tore her hair, her voice splitting the air. "Cursed be you, Gilgamesh. Cursed be you, Enkidu. You have slain the bull of heaven, the terror of the gods. May vengeance fall upon you both." Enkidu, still standing upon the corpse of the beast, raised his fist toward the goddess. His voice thundered across the city. "If I could reach you, I would tear you limb from limb and feed your flesh to the dogs. This is your cruelty, Ishtar, and we have cast it down as we cast down Humbaba." The people of Uruk roared in triumph. They poured into the streets, singing praises to their king and his brother. Flowers rained down, drums thundered. The city shook not with terror, but with joy. The bull of heaven lay slain, and Uruk was saved. Celebration and omen. That night, the city feasted. Gilgamesh and Enkidu drank from golden cups. The people crowned them with laurel wreaths, and the streets echoed with music. But amid the joy, a shadow lingered. Enkidu, though he laughed and boasted, felt a chill deep in his bones. He remembered Humbaba's curse. "May Enkidu die before you." And as the firelight flickered across his face, a heaviness weighed on his heart. Far above, in the halls of the gods, Enlil's voice thundered once more. "They have slain Humbaba, guardian of my forest. Now they have struck down the bull of heaven itself. Enough. One of them must die." The gods fell silent, and the fate of Enkidu was sealed. Chapter 13. The Curse of Enkidu. The people of Uruk still celebrated the death of the bull of heaven. Music and laughter echoed in the streets, and the air was thick with the smell of roasted meat and sweet wine. But while joy filled the city, in the heavens above, the gods gathered in anger. Enlil, the lord of wind and storm, spoke with fury. These two men have defied the will of heaven. They slew Humbaba, whom I set as guardian of the cedar forest. And now they have killed the bull of heaven, a beast of divine wrath. Their arrogance has no end. One of them must be punished. Shamash, god of the sun and protector of Gilgamesh, pleaded on their behalf. They did what was just. Humbaba was cruel, and the bull of heaven was sent in anger by Ishtar. Do not punish them for defending their city. But Enlil's eyes blazed. Justice, no. They have raised mortal hands against the decrees of the gods. One of them must fall. It is decided, Enkidu shall die. The council of the gods fell silent. Shamash lowered his gaze. The sentence could not be undone. Enkidu's first dream, that night, as the feasting continued, Enkidu lay down to rest. But sleep brought him no peace. Instead, a vision rose before him, dark and terrible. He saw the great gods gathered, their faces stern and cold. Enlil's voice boomed, "Because you have killed the bull of heaven, because you struck down Humbaba, death is upon you. Enkidu, your fate is sealed." He awoke with a cry, sweat soaking his skin. Gilgamesh rushed to his side. "What is it, brother?" Enkidu clutched his head. "A dream. No, a curse. The gods have decreed my death." Gilgamesh laughed it away, though his heart faltered. "Nonsense. You are strong as the mountains. No god can take you while I live." But Enkidu did not smile. Deep in his heart, he knew the dream was true. The second dream. On the second night, Enkidu dreamed again. He saw himself standing in the streets of Uruk, surrounded by shadows. The people turned their faces from him. The sky darkened, and from it descended a great eagle with claws like iron. It seized him, lifting him into the heavens. He struggled, but its grip was unbreakable. Then, suddenly, it released him, and he fell into the earth below. The ground split open, and he was swallowed into a land of dust and silence. He awoke trembling, clutching his chest. Gilgamesh sat beside him, worry etched across his face. "Tell me, brother. What did you see?" Enkidu whispered. "The gods are calling me. The ground itself opens to devour me. My days are numbered." Gilgamesh seized his hand. "Do not speak so. Together we have slain beasts that even the gods feared. Together we shall defy death itself." But even as he spoke, he felt a shadow creeping into his soul. Enkidu's anger. Days passed, and the curse grew heavier. Enkidu weakened, his strength fading little by little. His heart grew bitter, and anger burned within him. He cursed the trapper who had first brought him from the wild into the city. "Cursed be the hunter who found me. If not for him, I would still run free with the beasts, untouched by the wrath of the gods." Then he cursed Shemhat, the temple woman who had tamed him with her beauty and led him to Uruk. "Cursed be you, Shamhat. You lured me from the wild. You took me from the freedom of the beasts and brought me to this fate. Because of you I die. Because of you I know sorrow." Gilgamesh tried to calm him, but Enkidu's rage burned like fire. Shamash's voice. Suddenly, a voice broke through the darkness of his despair. It was Shamash, the sun god, speaking gently but firmly. "Enkidu, why do you curse the woman? She gave you bread to eat and wine to drink. She clothed you and led you to Uruk, where you found Gilgamesh, your brother. Because of her, you knew friendship deeper than life itself. Would you trade that bond for the wild again? Enkidu wept. His anger faded, and sorrow filled his heart. You are right, great Shamash. I curse no longer. I bless Shamhat, for through her I found Gilgamesh, and in him I found my soul's other half. The third dream. On the 12th day of his sickness, Enkidu dreamed again. This time, the vision was clear and final. He saw a great house of darkness, the dwelling of the dead. The air was thick with dust, and the food was clay. Kings and warriors sat alike in silence, clothed in feathers, their crowns discarded. None could rise, none could speak. A shadowy figure approached him, its wings vast and terrible. It seized him, dragging him into the black gates. Enkidu cried out, but no sound escaped his lips. The gates closed behind him, and he was lost. He woke with a cry, tears streaming down his face. Brother, he whispered, I have seen the place where I must go. The house where all men dwell after death. It is dark, it is silent, and none return. Gilgamesh's hands shook as he held him. No, the dream lies. You will live. You will fight by my side forever. But the truth could not be denied. Enkidu's fate was sealed, and Gilgamesh knew it. The omen, the people of Uruk, who once sang with joy, now whispered in sorrow. They saw Enkidu's strength fading, his mighty body wasting away. Gilgamesh refused to leave his side, but each passing day the shadow deepened. And so, the laughter of victory over the bowl of heaven faded into mourning. The gods had claimed their price. The curse had begun. Chapter 14. Enkidu's death. The palace of Uruk was silent. The sounds of feasting had long faded, replaced by the muffled sobs of servants and the anxious whispers of the people. Enkidu, once mighty as the wild bull, lay weak and trembling upon his bed. His skin burned with fever, his breath came heavy. Gilgamesh, king of Uruk, sat beside him day and night, refusing food, refusing rest. He clasped his brother's hand, as if by sheer will he could anchor Enkidu's soul to the world. But death was patient, and the gods had spoken. Enkidu's last words. On the 12th day of his illness, Enkidu stirred. His eyes, once fierce and wild, now glimmered with sorrow. He spoke, his voice hoarse but clear. My brother, my companion, the gods have judged me. Humbaba, I slew, the bull of heaven I struck down, and now this is my reward. Gilgamesh pressed his hand. Do not speak so. If the gods are unjust, I will defy them. I will plead before Shamash, before Enlil, before Ennu himself. You shall not die. Enkidu smiled faintly. You cannot fight this, Gilgamesh. Not even you. Tears welled in the king's eyes, but Enkidu went on. When I walked with the beasts, I was free, but alone. When Shamhat brought me bread, wine, and clothing, I cursed her in anger. But now I bless her, for through her I found you. And through you, I found friendship greater than the wild, greater even than the mountains. It is better to have loved and suffered than never to have known you. Gilgamesh bowed his head, unable to speak. The vision of the underworld. Enkidu's eyes grew distant. He whispered as though seeing something beyond the walls of the room. I see the great house of dust, the place where kings and peasants sit alike in darkness. Crowns lie in the dirt, scepters broken, the mighty and the humble, all clothed in feathers. None drink wine, none eat bread, only clay and silence. His breath caught and he trembled. A darkness calls me brother, a shadow with wings like night. It takes my hand. I cannot resist. I go now, where all men go. Gilgamesh clutched him tight. Stay. Do not leave me. I will fight the darkness for you." But Enkidu's strength was fading like water through the cracks of stone. Enkidu's final blessing. In his final moments, Enkidu turned his gaze upon Gilgamesh. "Do not grieve too long, my brother. Use your strength for the living. Seek wisdom where I cannot go. For you are destined for more than kingship. You are destined to search for what no man can hold. Remember me, Gilgamesh. Remember our hunts in the forest, our battles against the monsters, our laughter after victory. Carry me with you, always." His grip weakened. His chest rose, once more, then fell. His eyes closed. Silence filled the chamber. Enkidu, the wild man who had walked with beasts, the warrior who had stood against gods, was gone. Gilgamesh's cry. Gilgamesh fell upon his brother's body, crying out like a lion robbed of its cub. His voice shook the palace walls. "My brother, my companion, my heart's true friend, you were the axe at my side, the shield before me, the strength of my arm. Why did the gods choose you and not me? Why must I live while you fall into dust?" He tore his hair. He ripped his royal robes. He scattered dust upon his head. He wept without shame, a king brought low by grief. Enkidu, the mountains mourn you, the rivers weep for you, the beasts of the field cry out. And I, we who shared all things, am left alone. The people of Uruk wept with their king, but none could ease his pain. The silence, after set for 7 days and 7 nights, Gilgamesh refused to let Enkidu's body be buried. He kept watch, waiting for some sign, some breath, some miracle. But on the 7th day, the stench of death filled the room. Only then did Gilgamesh release him to the earth. They buried Enkidu with honor, with treasures and offerings fit for a king. The city mourned, for Enkidu had been their protector, their hero. But none mourned as Gilgamesh did. The seed of fear. When the burial was done, Gilgamesh walked alone through the empty halls of his palace. His face was hollow, his eyes burning with sorrow, and in his heart a new fear was born. If Enkidu, the strongest of men, could fall, if even he could be swallowed by death, then what of me? Shall I too one day lie in dust and silence? The thought struck him like a spear. For the first time, the great king of Uruk, the 1/3 divine, 2/3 mortal, trembled before the fate of all men. And so, grief turned to fear, and fear to obsession. Gilgamesh would not accept death. He would search for its end, no matter the cost. The death of Enkidu was not the end. It was the beginning of a greater journey. Chapter 15. The King Who Could Not Rest. The city of Uruk still buzzed with life. Merchants filled the markets, farmers brought their harvests, and the great walls stood strong against the desert winds. But within the palace, the heart of the city was broken. Gilgamesh, king of Uruk, no longer walked with pride. His steps were heavy, his crown a burden. Though his people looked to him for strength, he was hollow, consumed by grief. He had buried his brother Enkidu, yet the memory of his companion's final breath haunted him. The cries of his friend echoed in his dreams, and when he woke, the silence of death clung to him like a shadow. The restless king, day after day, Gilgamesh sat upon his throne, but he did not hear the petitions of his people. His thoughts wandered always to the same truth. Enkidu was gone, and Gilgamesh himself would one day follow. He spoke aloud, to no one and everyone. Is this the fate of all men? To labor, to love, to fight and then to crumble into dust. Even kings, even heroes. The courtiers lowered their heads. None dared answer, for none could. At night, he roamed the streets of Uruk, the golden lamps casting shadows over the stones. He looked upon the mighty walls he had built, and for a moment, pride stirred in his heart. These walls will outlast me, he thought. Yet what of me? My name may live, but my flesh will not. I will become dust as Enkidu did. The thought filled him with terror. The cry to the gods. At dawn, Gilgamesh climbed to the temple of Shamash, the sun god, his protector since childhood. He cast himself upon the ground, his face pressed against the cold stone. "O Shamash, you gave me victory in battle. You guided me against Humbaba and the bull of heaven. Yet what use is strength if even the mighty perish? Tell me, is there no way to escape the house of dust? Is there no path to life without end?" The temple was silent. The priests stood in awe of their king's desperation, but the god gave no answer. Only the rising sun bathed Gilgamesh in golden light, as if to say, "Life is fleeting, but it burns bright." Still, Gilgamesh was not satisfied. A whisper of hope. It was then that an old man, a sage of Uruk, approached him. The man's beard was white as salt, his eyes clouded but wise. He bowed low before the king. "My lord," he said softly, "you seek what no mortal may hold. Yet there is one who has gained it, Utnapishtim, the far-off one, who dwells at the edge of the world. The gods granted him eternal life after the great flood." Gilgamesh's heart pounded. "Utnapishtim, a man who lives forever. Where is he? Tell me." "He dwells beyond the waters of death," the sage whispered. "Beyond the twin mountains where the sun rises, beyond the scorpion men who guard the gates of Mesopotamia. Few have even dared the journey, and none. But he has crossed the waters. But if you seek him, perhaps you may find your answer." The decision. That night, Gilgamesh stood at the tomb of Enkidu once more. He laid his hand upon the cold earth and spoke to his brother. "You said to me, 'Seek wisdom where I cannot go,' and so I shall. If there is a way to escape death, I will find it. I will not rest until I have spoken with Utnapishtim." He returned to his palace, but not to stay. He cast off his royal robes, clothed himself in simple skins, and took only a bow and a dagger. His crown he left upon the throne, for he was no longer a king, he was a wanderer. His counselors begged him to remain. His people cried out, "Do not abandon us, great king. Uruk needs you." But Gilgamesh shook his head. "What is a kingdom to a man who fears the grave? Until I know the secret of eternal life, I cannot rule, I cannot rest. I must go." And with that, the king of Uruk left his city behind, striding into the wilderness, his face set toward the unknown horizon. The lonely road, the desert winds bit at his skin, the sun scorched his back, and the nights were filled with howls of beasts. Yet Gilgamesh pressed on, tireless, driven by a fire greater than hunger or thirst. He whispered to himself in the darkness, "I will find Utnapishtim. I will not die as Enkidu did. I will not fall into silence." And though no one answered, the stars seemed to watch him, ancient and cold, as if testing his resolve. The turning point. Thus began the second great journey of Gilgamesh, not for glory, not for conquest, but for life itself. A king who could not rest, who defied the fate of all men. Ahead lay mountains, monsters, and gods. Ahead lay despair and hope, death and secrets. Ahead lay the truth he feared and, perhaps, the answer he sought. Gilgamesh walked on, his shadow long under the moonlight, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Chapter 16. The Scorpion Men at the Gate of Mashu. The desert stretched endlessly before Gilgamesh. His feet bled from stones, and his lips cracked from thirst, yet he pressed onward. Days and nights passed, marked only by the burning sun and the cold stars. But still he whispered to himself, I will find Utnap. I will not surrender to death. At last, the horizon changed. No longer flat and barren, two colossal peaks rose from the earth like titans frozen in stone. They reached so high that their crowns touched the very heavens, their roots buried deep in the underworld. This was Mashu, the mountain at the edge of the world, the gate through which the sun passed at dawn and dusk. The guardians of the gate. At the foot of the mountain, Gilgamesh beheld a terrifying sight. Towering figures stood before the cavern entrance, their bodies half human and half scorpion. Their scales shimmered black in the dying light, their tails arched high and dripping venom. Their eyes burned like torches. One glance could pierce the soul of a mortal. These were the scorpion men, guardians of the path that led to the realm of the gods. When Gilgamesh approached, his knees trembled, but he did not turn back. The male guardian, vast as a mountain, bent down to gaze upon him. His voice rumbled like thunder. Who dares approach the gate of Mash? No mortal may enter the path of the sun. The journey belongs only to Shamash, the god of light. Gilgamesh bowed low, his voice raw but steady. I am Gilgamesh of Uruk, king and warrior. I come in search of Utnapishtim, the one who found eternal life. I cannot rest until I know the secret of the gods. The scorpion man studied him, his gaze piercing deep into Gilgamesh's heart. You are 2/3 God, 1/3 man. Your body is strong, but your flesh is mortal. None of your kind has ever walked the road beyond Mashu. The darkness is endless, the dangers without number. You will perish before you reach the other side. The plea of Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh fell to his knees. My brother Enkidu is gone. The dust has claimed him, as it will claim me, but I will not accept it. If there is a way, even the smallest chance to escape death, I must take it. I beg, you open the gate, let me pass. The scorpion man's wife, herself a towering figure of shadow and flame, placed her clawed hand upon her husband's arm. Look at him, she said softly. His grief burns like fire. His heart is broken, yet it drives him onward. Should we deny him when he seeks wisdom, not conquest? The scorpion man's eyes narrowed, then softened. He turned once more to Gilgamesh. Your journey will not grant you what you hope, but I see the fire in you, and I cannot turn you away. Go then, son of Uruk. Enter the tunnel of the sun. 12 leagues of darkness await you. If you survive, you will emerge in the garden of the gods. The gate opens. With a sound like grinding stone, the guardians pulled back the gates of Mut. A black tunnel yawned before Gilgamesh, stretching into eternal night. No light shone within, only a suffocating void. Gilgamesh's heart quaked, but he set his jaw. Thank you, he whispered. I will not turn back. The scorpion man raised his claw high in warning. Remember this, Gilgamesh, you may be strong, but even strength bows before the darkness. Do not falter, or the shadows will consume you. Gilgamesh stepped into the mouth of the tunnel, and the light of the world vanished behind him. Into the darkness he walked. At first, the air was thick, the silence absolute. He could not see his own hands, nor the ground beneath his feet. Yet he pressed onward, counting each step, whispering to keep madness away. 1 league, 2 leagues, 3 leagues. At the 4th league, he stumbled, certain the darkness had swallowed him whole, but still, he rose and walked on. At the 7th league, despair gripped him. He thought of Enkidu, lying in the cold earth. He thought of Uruk, left behind. A voice whispered in the void, "Turn back. None may pass." But Gilgamesh clenched his fists and growled into the emptiness. "I am Gilgamesh. I will not stop until I stand before Utnapishtim." At the 12th league, a faint glow appeared ahead. Golden light spilled through cracks in the darkness, and his heart surged with hope. The Garden of the Gods. He emerged into a land beyond imagining. Trees of crystal stretched their branches to the sky, their leaves gleaming with jewels. Fruit of lapis lazuli and carnelian glittered like stars. The air was heavy with the scent of divine blossoms, and the river ran with silver light. This was no land of mortals. This was the garden of the gods. Gilgamesh fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face, not of grief, but of awe. For the first time since Enkidu's death, wonder filled his heart. Yet, he knew his journey was far from over. Somewhere beyond this paradise dwelled Utnapishtim, the immortal, and Gilgamesh would find him, even if it meant crossing death itself. With new strength, he rose and walked deeper into the shining garden, toward the fate that awaited him. Chapter 17. The Tavern Keeper of the Gods. Gilgamesh wandered deeper into the shining garden, his eyes wide with awe. The jeweled trees shimmered like living fire, their fruits glowing with inner light. For the first time in many days, he breathed freely. The air was sweet, washing away the taste of dust and despair. But though the garden dazzled him, his heart remained restless. He had not yet found Utnapishtim. As he followed the silver river, Gilgamesh came upon a small dwelling built upon the shore. Its walls were carved from stone, its roof thatched with reeds, yet it radiated an otherworldly glow. Smoke curled from its chimney, carrying the scent of bread and honey. This was no ordinary house. It belonged to Siduri, the tavern keeper of the gods. Siduri's watchful eyes, within Siduri, sat at her table, golden veil draped across her brow. She was radiant, though mortal in form, and her eyes held the wisdom of the divine. She watched Gilgamesh approach, his face weathered by grief, his body battered by the desert and the tunnel of darkness. Fear touched her heart, she thought. Is this a madman, escaped from the underworld, or a god disguised as man? When Gilgamesh reached the threshold, Siduri barred the door and called out, "Stop where you stand, stranger. Why do you come here with sorrow carved upon your face? Why is your body wasted with suffering? Tell me who you are before I grant you a single drop of water or wine." Gilgamesh bowed low. "I am Gilgamesh, king of Uruk. I have wandered across the desert, through the mountains, and into the darkness of Mesh. My brother Enkidu lies in the dust of death, and grief drives me onward. I seek Utnapishtim, the immortal man, that I may learn the secret of life without end." Siduri's counsel. Siduri studied him for a long moment. Her heart softened, for she saw in his eyes the fire of truth. She opened the door and invited him inside. "Sit, son of Uruk. Rest your weary feet. Drink the wine of the gods and taste the bread of life." Gilgamesh entered and ate, though his hunger was shadowed by despair. Siduri spoke gently. "Gilgamesh, you seek a road no man should walk. The gods created mankind for mortality. When they shaped us, they set death as our portion, and life everlasting they kept for themselves. Why chase what is forbidden? Why destroy yourself in search of a dream that cannot be grasped?" Gilgamesh clenched his fists. "My friend Enkidu was strong, yet death claimed him. Shall it claim me as well? I will not rest until I hold the secret of eternal life. If Utnapishtim has found it, then I, too, must find it." Siduri sighed, sorrow in her eyes. If you seek him still, the road is long and perilous. Beyond this garden lies the sea that encircles the world. None may cross it, save Shamash, the sun god. Yet there is one man who dwells upon the shore, Urshanabi, the boatman of Utnapishtim. Perhaps he may carry you across. A warning. Before Gilgamesh left, Siduri placed her hand upon his arm. Listen to me, Gilgamesh. Life is not found in chasing eternity. Fill your belly with good things. Dance and be merry. Cherish the child who holds your hand. Delight in the embrace of your wife. These are the gifts the gods gave us. Do not throw them away in pursuit of shadows. For a moment, Gilgamesh faltered. Her words struck deep, and he longed to lay down his burden, to rest in the sweetness of life. But then the face of Enkidu filled his mind, pale and cold in the grasp of death. Rage burned in his chest, and his resolve hardened. I cannot, he said. Not while death waits for me at the end of every path. I will find Utnapishtim. If I fail, then let death take me, but I will not stop. Siduri bowed her head, sorrowful yet respectful. Then go, Gilgamesh. Follow the shore until you find the boatman, Ursh. He alone may help you cross the waters of death. The farewell. Gilgamesh rose, his strength renewed by bread and wine. He bowed deeply to Siduri. You have shown me kindness, though I am a stranger. I will remember your words, even if my heart cannot yet accept them. Siduri watched as the king of Uruk stepped out of her house and vanished along the shining riverbank. She whispered after him, May the gods guide your path, restless king. For though you chase eternity, perhaps you will find wisdom greater still. And so Gilgamesh journeyed onward, toward the edge of the world, where the boatman awaited. Chapter 18. The Boatman, Urshanabi. Gilgamesh walked along the glittering shore, where the jeweled trees gave way to a vast horizon of water. The sea stretched endless before him, dark and still, shimmering with a strange light beneath the heavens. He knew this was no ordinary ocean. This was the Sea of Death, a boundary no mortal had ever crossed. The waves whispered of finality. To step into them unprepared was to be dissolved into nothingness. Yet upon the rocky coast, Gilgamesh saw a figure tending to a strange vessel. The boatman of Utnapishtim. The man was tall and broad-shouldered, his skin darkened by sun and wind. His eyes glimmered with knowledge of things unseen, and in his hands he carried long oars carved with sacred runes. This was Urshanabi, the boatman who served Utnapishtim. Beside him were curious stone creatures, strange, half-living statues known as the Stone Men. They moved stiffly, yet obeyed Urshanabi's commands, built to withstand the deadly waters and guide the boat across the Sea of Death. Gilgamesh approached, calling out, Boatman, I am Gilgamesh of Uruk. I seek your master, Utnapishtim, the faraway. Will you take me across the Sea of Death? Urshanabi turned sharply, suspicion in his eyes. You speak boldly, stranger. Why should I ferry you? None cross these waters except at the will of the gods, and you, your face is worn with sorrow, your body broken by grief. What drives you to such madness? The clash. But Gilgamesh, consumed by restlessness and rage at his own mortality, grew impatient. I will not be turned back, he shouted. I will meet Utnapishtim, even if I must tear your strange creatures apart with my bare hands. Before Urshanabi could answer, Gilgamesh leaped forward. In his fury, he smashed the stone men, breaking them to pieces. Their shattered bodies crumbled into dust that drifted on the wind. Urshanabi cried out in despair, Foolish king, Those creatures were sacred. They guided my boat across the waters of death. Without them, the crossing is doomed. Do you know what you have done?" Gilgamesh froze, his breath heavy. Only then did he realize the depth of his folly. "Then, is my quest ended here?" he asked, despair in his voice. Urshanabi studied him with sharp eyes, then shook his head. "Not ended, but your path is made harder. If you would still cross, you must labor for it with your own hands." The test of strength. Urshanabi led Gilgamesh to the forest beyond the shore. "Cut down 300 great poles of wood," he commanded, each 60 cubits long. "Shape them smooth, strip them of branches, and bring them to the shore. With these, you may push the boat forward, keeping yourself from touching the waters of death. Only by this toil may you hope to reach Utna." Gilgamesh set to work without complaint. His muscles burned, his body ached, yet his spirit was relentless. Day after day he cut the mighty trees, stripping and shaping them until 300 poles lay ready. When the task was done, Urshanabi nodded with approval. "You have the strength of 10 men, Gilgamesh. Perhaps the gods themselves watch your journey. Now, let us see if you have the patience to match your power." The departure, they loaded the poles onto the great vessel, and Gilgamesh stepped aboard. The sea stretched before him like an abyss, silent and endless. Urshanabi raised the sail, and the boat drifted from the shore. "Remember, King of Uruk," he warned. "These waters are death itself. If you so much as touch them with your hand, or let them lap against your skin, you will perish. Only the poles will carry us forward." Gilgamesh gripped the first pole tightly, planting it deep into the waters, and pushing with all his might. The boat slid forward, cutting across the surface of the deadly sea. Pole after pole he used, his arms burning, his breath ragged. Still, the horizon remained endless, as though the sea stretched beyond time itself. But Gilgamesh did not falter. His heart thundered with determination, stronger even than his fear of death. Toward the faraway, Urshanabi watched in silence as the king labored. For the first time, he began to believe the man might succeed. At last, as the final poles dwindled, a faint shadow appeared upon the horizon. An island, distant yet steady, standing against the eternal waters. Urshanabi's voice rang out, "There, the land of Utnapishtim, the faraway. You have done what no mortal has ever done." Gilgamesh dropped the last pole, his body trembling with exhaustion, his heart pounding with hope. Soon, he would stand before the man who survived the great flood. Soon, he would demand the secret of immortality. Chapter 19. The Faraway and the Immortal Man. The journey across the Sea of Death had drained Gilgamesh of nearly all strength. His hands were blistered from the endless pushing of poles, his body gaunt from hunger and toil. Yet his spirit burned brighter than ever, for ahead, rising like a dream from the mist, was the island of Utnapishtim, the faraway, the land beyond death. As the boat touched the shore, Gilgamesh stepped onto the strange soil. The air was still, heavy with an eternal silence. The ground glimmered faintly, as though the earth itself remembered the floodwaters that once swept the world. Urshanabi gestured to a quiet dwelling by the water's edge. "There, Gilgamesh. Beyond those doors lives Utnapishtim, the man who conquered death. If you have courage left, go and face him. But be warned, he is not as you expect." Gilgamesh nodded, his chest tightening with anticipation. Meeting the immortal, he approached the dwelling and pushed the door open. Inside, he saw a man seated quietly beside his wife. His hair was white, his beard long, and his body frailed no different from any other aged mortal. His eyes, however, burned with wisdom that pierced the soul. This was Utnapishtim, the one granted immortality by the gods. Gilgamesh bowed deeply. Are you truly Utnapishtim, the one who survived the great flood, the one whom the gods blessed with eternal life? The old man nodded gently. I am he, and you, Gilgamesh, son of Uruk, have come farther than any mortal. Tell me, why do you seek me? Gilgamesh's voice shook with desperation. My heart is broken. Death has taken my brother Enkidu, and I too shall follow him into the grave. But I will not accept it. I am king of Uruk, strong as the lions, yet death waits for me all the same. Tell me, Utnapishtim, how may I escape my fate? How may I gain what you have been given, the life that does not end? Utnapishtim's question. The immortal man looked at him with pity. You seek what no man should seek. Do you think the gods grant life without end to all who ask? No, Gilgamesh. My fate was unique, born from a time when the heavens themselves wept. Gilgamesh clenched his fists. Then, tell me your story. Tell me how you won this gift, that I may know what I must do. Utnapishtim sighed, leaning back as though preparing to open a wound that had never fully healed. You wish to hear the truth of the great flood? Then listen, Gilgamesh, for I will reveal what no mortal has heard since the dawn of days. The warning of the gods. Utnapishtim's eyes grew distant as he began to speak. In the time long before you were born, the gods grew weary of mankind. The clamor of men filled the heavens, their noise too loud, their numbers too great. Enlil, Lord of storms, decreed destruction. He summoned the flood to wash away every living thing. But Ea, the god of wisdom, took pity upon me. In the silence of the night, he whispered to me through a reed wall. Man of Shurapuk, son of Ubaratutu, tear down your house and build a boat. Abandon riches, seek life instead. Take aboard the seed of all living creatures, for a great flood will destroy the world. Gilgamesh listened, his heart pounding as though he stood within the vision itself. The great boat, I obeyed. Utnapishtim continued. Day and night I labored, building a vessel as long as the sea itself, its walls high, sealed with pitch and bitumen. My neighbors mocked me, but I worked on. I gathered my family, my servants, beasts of the field, birds of the air, and all crafts of men. Then the storm broke. Utnapishtim's voice deepened, trembling with memory. The clouds rose black as night. Thunder roared. The earth split. The gods themselves trembled at the violence they had unleashed. For 6 days and 6 nights the storm raged, the waters covering all the lands, swallowing cities, mountains, temples. Mankind perished. All was silence. On the 7th day, the sea grew calm. The boat came to rest upon the mountain of Nisu. I released a David, returned, finding no resting place. Then a swallowet, too, returned. But the raven I set free did not come back. Then I knew the waters had receded. The gift of the gods. When I stepped onto dry land, I offered sacrifice to the gods. The smoke rose sweet, and the gods gathered like flies about the offering. Enlil was furious that any mortal had survived. But Ea spoke wisely. Punish the guilty, not the innocent. Was it right to destroy all mankind? Then Enlil's anger cooled. He took my wife and me by the hands, blessed us, and decreed, Utnapishtim and his wife shall dwell far away at the mouth of the rivers. To them alone we grant the gift of eternal life. Gilgamesh's desperation. Utnapishtim's tale ended in silence. Gilgamesh fell to his knees. So it was the gods' mercy, and nothing more. no trial of strength, no battle, no wisdom I may learn to claim the same. Must I return to Uruk, doomed to die like all others? The old man's eyes softened. Gilgamesh, you have come seeking eternity, but perhaps you must first learn the weight of mortality. Still, if you truly desire to test yourself, I will set before you a challenge. Endure it, and perhaps you may know what lies beyond the grasp of men. Gilgamesh raised his head, fire burning again in his eyes. Name your trial, Utnapishtim. I will not fail. Chapter 20, The Test of Sleep. Gilgamesh knelt before Utnapishtim, his hands trembling, yet his spirit burning with defiance. He had crossed deserts, battled lions, faced scorpion men, and sailed the sea of Deathall for this moment. The immortal man gazed at him with calm eyes, like the still waters of eternity. You desire immortality, Utnapishtim said, but tell me, Gilgamesh, can you even master the smallest defeat of death? Can you resist the gentle embrace of sleep, which is its brother? Gilgamesh frowned. Sleep is nothing to me. I have walked for days without rest. I am a king, strong as iron. Set the trial, and I will endure. Utnapishtim gestured to a stone seat near his hearth. Sit there, stay awake. If you can remain sleepless for 6 days and 7 nights, then perhaps you may prove yourself worthy of eternal life. The beginning of the trial, Gilgamesh sat straight-backed, his eyes fixed on the firelight dancing in the shadows of the hut. He clenched his fists, determined not to waver. The waves still pounded faintly outside the dwelling, like a drumbeat echoing his will. At first, it seemed easy. His mind was filled with Enkidu's face, with the sound of his laughter, with the oath they had sworn together to never fear death. For you, Enkidu, I will endure, Gilgamesh whispered. But slowly, his eyelids grew heavy. The warmth of the fire wrapped around him like a blanket. His muscles, weary from years of wandering, begged for release. Sleep crept upon him like a thief. The silent witness, Utnapishtim's wife, who had watched quietly from the shadows, leaned toward her husband. He will never resist it, she said softly. The weariness of mortals always wins. But Utnapishtim only shook his head. Let us see. He believes himself stronger than death. Let us see how long he lasts. Gilgamesh fought on. He bit his lip until blood filled his mouth. He struck his thighs with his fists to remain awake. Yet, despite his fury, his eyes began to close. The first fall, like a mountain collapsing, sleep took him. His head sank forward, his breathing slowed. The great king of Uruk, conqueror of Humbaba, and killer of the bull of heaven, slumbered like a child in his chair. Utnapishtim sighed. You see, wife, even the strongest man cannot fight sleep. But she frowned. He will deny it when he wakes. Bake a loaf of bread each day he sleeps, and lay it beside him. When he awakens, he cannot deny the passing of time. Utnapishtim agreed, and so it was done. The passing of days. On the first day, she baked a fresh loaf and placed it beside Gilgamesh. On the second day, another loaf. By the third, the first bread had grown hard. By the fourth, mold crept upon it. By the fifth, the loaves grew dry and cracked. By the sixth, the first loaves stank with decay. And on the seventh, 7 loaves sat before Gilgamesh, some fresh, some old, a silent record of his failure. The awakening, at last, Gilgamesh stirred. His eyes opened, and he leaped to his feet. I have conquered sleep, he cried. See, I did not close my eyes. But the immortal only smiled sadly. He pointed to the loaves. Look, Gilgamesh. The proof lies before you. Count them. Smell them. Touch them. Each one marks a day you slept, lost to the world. You could not last a single night, let alone 7. If you cannot master sleep, how will you master death? Gilgamesh stared at the loaves, his face falling into despair. He touched the first one, it was hard as stone. He touched another, green with mold. Tears welled in his eyes. His strength, his courage, his glory all meant nothing against this quiet truth. The lesson of sleep. Utnapishtim's wife pitied the broken king. She whispered to her husband, "He has suffered enough. Grant him something, a token, a chance. Do not send him home empty." Utnapishtim studied Gilgamesh for a long moment. "Perhaps you are right. He has come farther than any mortal, even if he has failed. Yes, there may yet be one gift left for him." Gilgamesh looked up, desperate. "What gift? Tell me, old one. I will not return to Uruk with empty hands. Show me the secret." The immortal man rose slowly, leaning on his staff. His voice was heavy, yet gentle. "There is no life without death, Gilgamesh. But there is a plant hidden deep beneath the waters of the sea. Its thorns will cut you, but if you take it, it can restore youth. This is no eternal life, but it may give you hope, and through you, hope for mankind." Gilgamesh's eyes blazed with new fire. "Tell me where it lies, and I will seize it, though the sea itself rise against me." Chapter 21. The Plant of Youth. The dawn crept across the horizon, casting pale light over the dwelling of Utnapishtim. Gilgamesh stood on the threshold, the sea wind tugging at his hair, his heart pounding with a renewed purpose. Though he had failed the test of sleeplessness, hope had not abandoned him. There was still the promise of the plant that restored youth. The secret revealed, Utnapishtim spoke in a voice like the slow turning of ages. "Far beneath the waters lies a plant with thorns, sharp as spears. It dwells at the roots of the ocean, where light never touches. Its name is Old Man Becomes Young Again. If you can claim it, Gilgamesh, you may restore your strength, your body, your years. But beware the sea guards its treasures fiercely." Gilgamesh's eyes gleamed. "I have wrestled lions, slain giants, crossed death itself. The sea will not bar my way. Tell me how I may descend to its depths." Utnapishtim nodded toward the shore. "There lies a great stone of weight. Tie it to your feet. It will carry you to the ocean floor. But you must cut the plant quickly and return before the water crushes you." The descent. Without hesitation, Gilgamesh strode to the shore. The waves foamed white, as if mocking his courage. He tied the heavy stone to his feet, wrapped a length of rope about his waist, and looked once more to the sky. "For you, Enkidu," he whispered. "For Uruk." He stepped into the sea. The waters closed over him, and the world of air vanished in a swirl of bubbles. Darkness swallowed him whole. Down, down he sank, pulled by the stone, deeper and deeper into the crushing silence. His chest burned, his ears rang, but he clenched his jaw and pressed onward. At last, his feet touched the seabed, cold and endless. And there, nestled among rocks and curling weeds, he saw it, the plant of youth. It was no ordinary plant. Its stalk glowed faintly with a pale, greenish light, as if it carried the memory of the sun within it. Its leaves were sharp and curled like blades, and from its heart rose a flower tinged with red, pulsing faintly as though it were alive. Gilgamesh reached for it. The thorns tore his hands, blood clouding the water, but he did not stop. With one final wrench, he tore the plant free. The ocean seemed to shudder. Waves stirred as though some great beast had been awakened by his theft. But Gilgamesh, clutching the plant to his chest, kicked free of the stone, and began to rise. His lungs screamed for air, his body shook with exhaustion, but the light of the surface glimmered above him. With a final, desperate surge, he burst from the sea, gasping, the plant still in his hands. The triumph. He staggered onto the shore, collapsing in the sand. For long moments he lay there, coughing seawater, his chest heaving. Then, slowly, he raised the plant high above his head. "I have it," he roared, his voice echoing across the waves. "I, Gilgamesh, have stolen back the years from the deep. Death shall not claim me so easily." Utnapishtim watched from afar, a faint smile on his lips, though sorrow lingered in his eyes. "He has found hope," he murmured to his wife. "But whether hope will last only the gods know." The plan for Uruk. That night, Gilgamesh sat by the fire, holding the plant carefully in his hands. He did not eat it, though the temptation gnawed at him. Instead, he thought of his people. "If I alone consume this plant, what does it mean? I will be young again, but my people will still wither. Uruk will still decay. No, this gift must be for them. I will return with it, plant it in the heart of the city, and let all share in its blessing. The children of Uruk shall know youth, their fathers will rise in strength again, and our name shall outlast the ages." For the first time in many years, Gilgamesh smiled. His quest, his suffering, his endless journey had meaning now. He would bring not only glory, but life to his people. A shadow of doom. Yet even as he slept that night, the waves whispered. A serpent slid silently through the reeds, its tongue flickering, its eyes gleaming with hunger. Drawn by the scent of the plant, it coiled closer. And though Gilgamesh dreamed of Uruk's bright future, destiny stirred in the darkness, preparing to steal away his triumph. Chapter 22. The Serpent's Theft. The night lay heavy over the shore. Stars burned bright above, their reflections shimmering on the restless waters. Gilgamesh slept soundly by the fire, his face softened by rare peace, the sacred plant cradled at his side. His dreams were filled with visions of Uruk, its walls gleaming, its people singing, children running with laughter, the old standing tall, with strength renewed. For the first time since Enkidu's death, his heart felt light. But fate does not grant men their victories so easily. The serpent approaches. From the reeds by the water's edge came a soft rustling. A serpent slid forward, its scales glimmering faintly in the firelight, its body long and sinuous. Its eyes gleamed with hunger, its tongue flickering in the cool night air. The plant's scent sharp, sweet, and ancient pulled the creature closer, closer still. The serpent circled Gilgamesh's resting form, wary of the fire, but unafraid of the sleeping man. It coiled, tense, then struck. With swift precision, it seized the plant in its jaws. The thorns cut its mouth, but the beast did not release its prize. With a low hiss, it slithered away into the shadows, carrying the gift of youth into the wilderness. Gilgamesh awakens. Gilgamesh stirred as the dawn broke, his eyes opening to the pale light of morning. He stretched, a smile already forming on his lips, and reached for the plant tonally to clutch empty ground. His heart froze. He looked around frantically, overturning stones, tearing through reeds, his voice rising in a roar of desperation. No, no, it cannot be. The plant, the hope of Uruk, where is it? The fire's ashes whispered coldly, offering no answer. His tracks from the night lay undisturbed, but near the water's edge. He saw the marks, long, winding, pressed deep into the sand. A serpent's trail. Gilgamesh fell to his knees, clutching at the earth with bloodied fingers. His cry of anguish tore through the morning air like a broken blade. The bitter realization, Utnapishtim watched from afar, sorrow etched upon his ageless face. He spoke softly to his wife. "Do you see? Even when man grasps at eternity, it slips from his hand. The gods made it so. Youth belongs not to mortals, but to time itself. Gilgamesh has learned the truth, but in the harshest of ways." Gilgamesh stumbled back toward them, his eyes red with rage and grief. Why must even hope be torn from me? What have I done that the heavens mock me so? Utnapishtim laid a hand upon his shoulder. "You have not been mocked, Gilgamesh. You have been taught. For even if you had taken the plant, death would still claim you one day. You cannot bind eternity to yourself or your people. What you may do, what all men may do, is carve their names upon the world through deeds, through wisdom, through the legacy they leave behind." Gilgamesh stared at the ground, the serpent's trail already vanishing beneath the tide. The weight of his journey, his trials, his hopes lost, pressed down upon him like stone. A fading dream. As the sun climbed higher, Gilgamesh walked alone by the shore, the waves lapping at his feet. He whispered Enkidu's name, his voice trembling. "My brother, I tried. I sought the secret of life for us both, but it was stolen as you were stolen. Perhaps all I can do now is honor you, and make Uruk shine so bright that death itself cannot erase us." The sea answered only with its eternal rhythm, and the serpent was gone, carrying immortality into the wild, where no man would ever claim it again. The return home. With heavy steps, Gilgamesh prepared to leave. He had no plant, no immortality, no reward for his endless suffering, yet he carried something greater within him. The wisdom of loss, and the knowledge that his strength must build not eternal youth, but eternal legacy. And so, turning from the sea, he began the long road back to Uruk, his heart wounded but his spirit hardened. His people awaited him, and though he could not give them the years of the gods, he could give them the works of men. The Epic of Gilgamesh, son of Lugalbanda, king of Uruk, was not yet finished. Chapter 23. The Return to Uruk. The long road back. The road stretched endlessly before Gilgamesh. He walked in silence, his mighty frame bowed beneath the invisible weight of loss. His sandals ground against stone and sand. His cloak clung heavy with dust, but his thoughts weighed heavier still. The serpent's theft replayed in his mind again and again. The glimmering scales, the swift strike, the trail vanishing into the sea. Each memory was a knife, twisting deeper. The plant had been the final hope, the answer to the grief that had haunted him since Enkidu's death. Now it was gone, and with it, the dream of eternity. Yet, as he walked, he began to see what he had ignored before. The mountains stood, timeless and silent. Rivers carved the earth, flowing as they had for ages untold. Villages thrived by their banks. Men and women laughed, wept, and built. These were mortal lives, fragile but fierce, shining briefly like sparks in the dark. And yet, together, they endured. Lessons on the journey. At a small village near the river's bend, Gilgamesh paused to rest. The people there knew his face. Word of his deeds had long traveled across the land. They brought him bread and water, asking for tales of his journey. A child, no older than 10, asked him shyly, "Great king, did you find the secret of life?" Gilgamesh looked at the boy, his eyes deep with sorrow. At first, he wanted to say no, but then he studied the boy's curious face, the laughter of children chasing each other in the dust, the proud hands of their parents weaving baskets and tending flocks. "Yes," Gilgamesh said softly, "I found it. It is not hidden in plants or jewels or the halls of the gods. It is here, in your lives, in the bonds between you, in the walls you build and the stories you carry forward. That is life eternal." The villagers bowed in awe, but Gilgamesh felt no pride. He had spoken not as a king, but as a man who had learned through suffering. Visions of Enkidu. That night, as he slept by the hearth, Gilgamesh dreamed again of Enkidu. His friend stood tall, strong as he had been before death claimed him. His hair was wild, his eyes alive with fire. But this time, there was no sorrow in his face. "Gilgamesh," Enkidu said, his voice warm, "you have walked farther than any man. You have faced gods, demons, and death itself. But your true battle was always within you. Now you know. You cannot fight death, but you can outlive it through what you give the world." Gilgamesh reached for him, but Enkidu was already fading, a smile lingering like sunlight at dawn. When Gilgamesh awoke, tears glistened in his eyes. Yet they were not tears of despair, but of release. The walls of Uruk, after many days, he saw it, Uruk, rising in the distance, its walls gleaming beneath the sun. His heart swelled with pride, for he had forgotten how magnificent it was. The stones stretched high, strong, and enduring the work of men's hands, lasting longer than their lives. At the gates, the people cheered. They had feared he would never return, but here he was, their king, weathered and weary, yet greater than before. Gilgamesh lifted his arms to them, his voice carrying across the square, "My people, I have sought immortality. I crossed the mountains, the seas, and the underworld. I spoke to Utnapishtim, I touched the waters of death, and I held the plant of youth in my hands. Yet it was taken, as all things are taken. Immortality is not ours. But look upon these walls, your walls. They will stand long after we are gone. That is the gift we can leave to the world. A new wisdom." The elders of Uruk gathered around him, listening as he told of his journey. He spoke of Humbaba, the cedar forest, the bull of heaven, the grief of Enkidu, and the bitter theft of the serpent. But, above all, he spoke of the lesson he had gained, that man must build, create, and love, for these are the true paths to eternity. The people wept and rejoiced. They saw not just their king, but a man, transformed a man, who had faced the edge of the world and returned with wisdom carved into his soul. And so Gilgamesh, the restless wanderer, became Gilgamesh, the wise king. He would no longer chase the horizon for secrets the gods denied him. Instead, he would shape Uruk into a legacy that no death could erase. Closing the circle. At night, he walked upon the walls, his hand brushing the ancient stones. He looked out over the city, its temples, its markets, its homes filled with life. For the first time, peace settled upon him. He whispered to the wind, "Enkidu, my brother, we are not eternal. But Uruk will be, and through it, we will live forever." The stars above shone like the eyes of the gods, watching, silent. And so the Epic of Gilgamesh, king of Uruk, found its end not in immortality, but in the wisdom of mortality. For man's greatness lies not in living forever, but in building that which outlasts his breath. Epilogue. The eternal legacy of Gilgamesh. The quiet after the storm. Years passed, and Uruk flourished under the rule of its king. Gilgamesh no longer sought the secrets of gods or the treasures of the deep. Instead, he poured his strength into building temples to honor the heavens, canals to feed the fields, and walls that stretched high and unbroken, protecting his people from all threats. The restless wanderer became a man of vision. His grief, though never forgotten, turned into wisdom. His voice guided, his hand protected, and his heart once torn by the fear of death beat steady with purpose. The people of Uruk whispered of his deeds, and those whispers became stories. Those stories spread, carried by merchants, sung by travelers, and etched into clay tablets by scribes. The weaving of legend. In time, the man became more than a man. Children who never knew Enkidu still played games in the streets, pretending to be Gilgamesh slaying Humbaba in the cedar forest. Elders, sitting in the cool shade, told how he had defied Ishtar's wrath and faced the bull of heaven. Priests recited his journey across the waters of death, how he spoke to Utnapishtim, and how he returned with the wisdom of mortality. Every telling reshaped the man into myth, until Gilgamesh lived not only in Uruk's walls, but in the hearts and imaginations of people across Mesopotamia. The unspoken truth. In his later years, Gilgamesh often stood alone upon the walls of Uruk. He would gaze at the city's lights, flickering like stars below, and he would smile. He knew what the people did not, that death still waited for him, as it waited for all. But he no longer feared it. For though his breath would cease, his works would endure, and his story would ripple through time like waves upon the river. Perhaps this was immortality, not the kind he once sought in distant lands or stolen plants, but the kind woven into memory, legend, and stone. The eternal king. And so, when at last his time came, Gilgamesh lay upon his bed, surrounded by the people who loved him. He closed his eyes, not in fear, but in peace. Uruk mourned, yet even in mourning, they celebrated him, for they knew their king had conquered something greater than death. He had conquered oblivion. His name, his deeds, his wisdom would never fade. Generations would rise and fall, kingdoms would crumble, rivers would shift their course, but still the story would be told. The story of Gilgamesh, 2/3 divine and 1/3 man, who sought eternity and found it not in endless life, but in the legacy he left behind. Final words. Thus ends the Epic of Gilgamesh. A tale of friendship and grief, of pride and humility, of loss and wisdom. And so Gilgamesh endures, not in flesh, not in God's secrets, but in story, forever.